you one more question before we close out. We had an anonymous question who asks, where did the name Ubisoft come from? Does it have a meaning for you?
Yes, Ubisoft, is when it was created, the goal was to say, okay, Ubi, which is ubiquity. The goal was to say, okay, we can be everywhere. And that's why Ubisoft now is sold on a worldwide basis.
Ubisoft is a story of rags to riches, starting off supporting a family farming business to becoming one of the biggest video game publishing studios.
Ubisoft has been involved in a global crisis due to what employees describe as a toxic work culture that involves bullying, harassment, threats.
Ubisoft's had quite the troubled year.
In the 1980s, the Gilmont family established itself as a supporting business in the Brittany province of France. The Gilmont family had 5 sons: Christian, Claude, Gerard, Michel, and Yves. From a young age, the brothers were exposed to the ins and outs of business as they pitched in the company's sales, distribution, accounting, and management with their parents before going to university. After a while, the family's business started declining, so Yves' older brother, Claude, started to dabble with CD audio. The 1980s was a revolutionary time for technology, so they started to sell computers to farmers. And after that, they created a shop that sold stuff for farmers and computers and video games. However, the brothers saw that the cost of buying computers and software from a French supplier was twice as expensive as buying the same materials in the UK and shipping it to France. So they came up with the idea of a mail order business, which their mother approved as long as they split the shares evenly. And their first business was born, Gilmont Informatique, founded in 1984. The venture turns out to be extremely successful. They were getting orders from French retailers and were able to undercut other suppliers to 50%, saving them more money. In just 2 years, this company was earning about 40 million French francs, roughly $5.8 million at the time. The demand kept increasing. The brothers recognized that video games was becoming a lucrative business, so they decided that they had to get into the industry of video game development, and their second business was formed, Ubisoft, or Ubisoft, which was short for Ubiquitous Software. Ubisoft initially operated out of offices in Paris, moving to a commune in the southern-eastern suburbs of Paris. They had a bunch of teenagers working at their desk, or their bedroom, or in their garage, and they had them come in and present their game to them. And they picked some of their ideas and decided to take a risk to see where it would go.
Rather than recruit developers to their Paris office with the rest of the operations, the Guillemot brothers decided to lure them with the promise of working in a unique environment, a gorgeous chateau in Brittany. Led by brothers Gerard and Michel Guillemot, here a small group of developers started working on the first internal Ubisoft projects.
A game they released that year is Zombie, a first-person action zombie game inspired by the George A. Romero film Dawn of the Dead, being set in a zombie-filled shopping mall blocked in by trucks. The player controls 4 protagonists exploring the mall. If the player dies, he turns into a zombie, in which they roam the room that they died in. Zombie sold 5,000 copies by January 1987. Ubisoft released other games exclusively in France, translated to Cinema Clap, Iron, and Fire Mask. Games mostly lost to time. In 1988, 6 developers were working at the company. Michel Ancel, who was an important person in Ubisoft's history. When he was a teenager, he sent an animation to Ubisoft he made about the ozone layer problem in the stratosphere at the time. Ubisoft loved it and asked him to come to Paris, and they had asked him to make games for them. And not so long after, he moved there to work as a developer. Yves Guillemot asked him to pitch in the company and come up with a game idea. So Ansel went to work. He created a prototype of a game based on a character he made when he was a teenager, named Rayman. The idea was greenlit in 1992, resulting in the development of the actual game. The game style was inspired by Celtic, Chinese, and Russian fairy tales. Having spent a lot of time by the rivers, chasing insects, and climbing trees in his childhood, After 3 years of hard work, the game was released in 1995. EVE made deals with popular game publishers to distribute the game in France, including expanding their reach in countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany, making Ubisoft's first commercially successful game. By the end of 1995, 400,000 copies of Rayman had been sold in Europe, and the game sold 900,000 copies globally by 1997. It had become the all-best-selling PlayStation game in the UK. Ubisoft entered the video game distribution and wholesales market, and by 1993 had become the largest distributor of video games in France. 1996. Ubisoft listed its initial public offering and raised over $80 million to assist them with expanding, opening studios in China, Canada, Spain, Italy, and Morocco. Ubisoft was well known in Europe in places like France and the UK. They needed a new IP that appealed to their few audience overseas, especially in the USA. In 1999, the internet came to Europe. One of the brothers, Michel Gilmont, made the company Gameloft to make free-to-play online games. Obviously, this was going to be hard to monetize, so Ubisoft sold the rights for its games to companies. As a result, the share price of Ubisoft multiplied by 5. They raised 170 million euros, and quickly after, they bought the company Red Storm in 2000, which was home to the Tom Clancy series, a series of first-person tactical shooters. After Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Takedown missions in Korea, Ubisoft were now developers for the rest of the games. Tom Clancy allowed Ubisoft to push themselves to American audiences. In 2001, Ubisoft bought the rights to the IPs such as The Mist and Prince of Persia series. 2003, they released Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, and Beyond Good and Evil. On September 9, 2003, Ubisoft announced that it would change its name and introduce a new logo known as the iconic swirl. In December 2004, Ubisoft and EA had a little bit of drama. EA announced that it had acquired 19.9% of Ubisoft shares through an investment firm, and this made EA one of Ubisoft's biggest shareholders. And second was the Gilmont family, who owned 22.8% of the company. EA's vice president at the time, Jeff Brown, tried assuring that they would be good shareholders and they weren't trying to interfere with Ubisoft's operations. Yves Guillemot sent an email to EA basically telling them to back off, fearing EA's goal might be to gain control of Ubisoft studios. EA ended up selling the shares a few years later. The next few years would be prosperous for Ubisoft. They would establish another IP in 2007.
Assassin's Creed is almost here.
Uplay Altair, Master Assassin.
Altair, I hold here a list. 9 men who need to die.
One of my favorite features is just the chases, because they're super exciting. The feeling of a chase and then of finally losing the guards.
People couldn't get enough of this game. It has such a unique concept. You play as this guy named Desmond Miles, who gets kidnapped and is forced to enter a machine called the Animus, which allows him to travel to the past and cosplay his ancestors. And in this world, you're able to kill bad people. Assassin's Creed sold 200 million copies and is sitting as the 11th best-selling video game franchise. April 2008, Assassin's Creed was released on PC. Like internet fashion, there was a pirated version of the game uploaded after like 2 months. Ubisoft obviously was very unhappy about the situation, considering the fact they would have lost revenue because the pirated version was downloaded over 700,000 times. Someone had to pay for this, so they decided to sue OEM, the company that distributed the CD versions of the game, $25 million plus damages for the leak. The lawsuit claims that OEM did not take proper measures to protect its product. Ubisoft was also suing for copyright infringement, demanding no less than $10 million for each count of negligence and breach of contract. 16 years has passed and there is still no public update to this case, but at the time there was widespread support for Ubisoft from the audience, hoping that they will win the lawsuit. And if it happened today, that would probably not be the case. Ubisoft will continue to buy out game franchises and studios to expand themselves. In 2012, Ubisoft ran into an issue again. They were sued by a science fiction author, John L. Beiswenger, claiming that the Assassin's Creed series was copyright infringement and illegally copied ideas established in his novel Link. Articles immediately pounced on the news. This was not looking good for Ubisoft. Bieswanger dropped a 42-page PDF explaining how Ubisoft allegedly ripped him off. In his book, there is a device called the Link, which let users relive their ancestral memories of long-dead relatives through DNA, and that was pretty close to the device in the series called the Animus that does the same thing. Bieswanger also referenced the assassination attempts used with Link on historical figures, although this point is kind of weak since the targets does not match any in the Assassin's Creed universe. Bieswanger also explained how his books had spiritual and biblical tones and had a recurring theme of the battle between good and evil, and okay, so do many other games. Bieswanger demanded $5.25 million in damages, and to stop the up-and-coming release of Assassin 3, set to be released on October 20th, along with any future Assassin's Creed games that may feature his ideas. Ubisoft refused to make any statements about the lawsuit. Luckily for them, on May 30th, 2012, Bieswanger dropped the lawsuit, but he was still allowed to reinstate the charges against Ubisoft at a later date. And you're probably wondering, what's with the abrupt dropping of the lawsuit? It seems like Bieswanger got bored and decided that it was time to focus his attention somewhere else. Well, it's been over 10 years since the lawsuit, and Mr. Bieswanger never tried to sue Ubisoft ever since. Ubisoft Connect, or Uplay, was Ubisoft's own game launcher, akin to Steam or Epic Games, but Ubisoft's games were exclusively sold on their storefront. Reception of Uplay was really negative, mainly because of DRM. Uplay required players to maintain a constant connection to the internet, even on games that didn't require Wi-Fi, and if they didn't, they would disconnect and lose any progress they made. This would falter after a denial of service attack, when someone tries to make a computer or a network unavailable by overloading it with too much activity, so it can't handle real users' requests, rendering games like Silent Hunter 5 and Assassin's Creed 2 unplayable for several days. Requirement for constant internet connection was lifted for existing Uplay games towards the end of 2010, being changed to a single validation on game launch, only requiring a one-time online activation on install. On September 2012, Ubisoft employees confirmed in an interview that no further Ubisoft games would be using the always-on requirement. Same year, Tavis Ormandy, an information security engineer at Google, claimed that Uplay was a rootkit. A rootkit is a type of malicious software that allows someone to secretly access and control a computer without permission. Tavis Ormandy first found this out when he bought Assassin's Creed Revelation on the game's launcher. He saw that during the installation procedure, the Uplay browser add-on was granting access to different websites and applications. This flaw launched certain programs without users' consent. Although this was a pretty niche controversy, Ubisoft quickly solved this by releasing a patch. In 2013, Ubisoft's network was attacked. 58 million usernames, email addresses, and encrypted passwords had been illegally accessed, but debit and credit card details were safe. Ubisoft assured everyone that everything was fine. It's 2014. Ubisoft is getting ready to release their 8th Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Unity. You play as Arnaud Dorian, a native Frenchman whose goal is to rise up through the assassin's rank after his adopted father gets killed. The game released on November 11th, 2014.
The fuck? Well, it did vanish.
And it was quite controversial.
At the center of Unity lies Arnaud, our deadliest assassin yet. You'll experience the revolution through his eyes. Assassin's Creed Unity takes the franchise to unprecedented territory.
Slow down, girl.
Earlier today, we introduced the 4-player shared experience.
The fuck?
We've completely redesigned the fundamental building blocks of the core experience itself. Unity is about carving your own unique path through a huge, immersive city filled with countless stories, activities, and rewards.
Upon release, the game was infested with bugs and glitches. The game ran at 20 FPS and would drop below that. The terrible quality of the game prevented players from experiencing the full potential of the game. Ubisoft announced that it would stop sales of the game's Season Pass and Golden Edition. They offered the first DLC pack, Dead Kings, for free. And as an apology, Ubisoft would compensate those who bought the Season Pass with a free digital copy of one of 6 Ubisoft games: Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, The Crew, Far Cry 4, Just Dance 2015, Rayman Legends, or Watch Dogs. However, if a player would accept this offer, they would instantly give up their right to sue Ubisoft for their bad game, which is extremely funny. It's 2015. Vivendi, a French mass media company whose entire business is to acquire companies who dabbled in television, film, video games, book publishing, etc. By 2015, Ubisoft was valued at $6.4 billion. Vivendi was the first company they had set their sights on. On October 2015, they bought shares in Ubisoft stock, giving them a 10.4% stake in Ubisoft, in which Yves Gilmont also told him to back off, seeing this as a hostile takeover. A hostile takeover allows a bidder to take over a target company whose management is unwilling to agree to a merger or a takeover. The party who initiates a hostile takeover approaches the shareholder directly, as opposed to seeking approval from the directors of the company. At an E3 conference in 2016, Gilmont stressed the importance of creative freedom.
So when you are attacked with a company that has a different philosophy, you know it can affect what you've been creating from scratch. So you fight with a lot of energy to make sure it can't be destroyed.
Vivendi acquired stake in mobile game publisher Gameloft, owned by the Gilmont family. Vivendi acquired 500 million euros worth of shares in Gameloft, and they had 30% of the shares under French law to make a public tender offer. This action enabled Vivendi to complete the takeover of Gameloft by June 2016. To fend off this attack, the Gilmont asked for more Canadian investors. Vivendi had increased their shares in Ubisoft to 15%, while the Gilmont had 9%. September 2016, Vivendi had gained 23% of the shares, while Gilmont had 20%. December 2016, they had almost 30% of the shares. Throughout 2017, Vivendi and the Gilmont family kept battling it out, trying to buy more shares than each other. On March 20th, 2018, the Gilmont family came out on top. Ubisoft and Vivendi struck a deal, ending any chance of Vivendi taking over. Vivendi agreeing to sell all of its $30 million shares to other parties, and some of those shares were sold to Tencent. And a year later, Vivendi would just get rid of all their shares. On the same day, Ubisoft announced their partnership with Tencent to help bring their games to the Chinese market. After 2018, this would be the start of Ubisoft's downfall. They were focusing on game franchises like Assassin's Creed, Tom Clancy, Far Cry, and Watch Dogs. Sales for their games would begin to drop. They began releasing games with no quality control. Single-player games had microtransactions. Ubisoft would downgrade their game before releasing it.
Ghost Recon Breakpoint builds on the series' tactical action by adding a diverse array of environments to explore and enemies to destroy. It launches this October on Xbox One, PS4, and PC. Batoko
as a result is a bloated game that's confused about what it wants to be, that worse still doesn't even get most of the basics right.
Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint is, I think, the second worst game I've played all year.
On October 2019, they postponed 3 of the 6 titles that they planned to release that year. Ubisoft stated in January 2020 that it would be reorganizing its editorial board to improve the quality of the existing and released games. From June to July 2020, Ubisoft had been hit with sexual misconduct accusations. Ubisoft employee Ashraf Ismail, the creative director of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, stepped down due to the accusations. His employment was later terminated by Ubisoft in August 2020 after an internal investigation. 2 executives of Ubisoft were also accused and let go. Most employees were forced to resign. The French newspaper started a deeper investigation into Ubisoft's workplace, and articles were released detailing the same thing. Apparently, Ubisoft was ran like a mafia. Assassin's Creed Odyssey creative director Jonathan Dumont was an abusive boss. He used his physical presence to intimidate people. He slammed doors, punched walls, threw objects, and verbally abused staff members. Mark Alexis Coe knew all the bad things that were happening, but never said anything, and would make employees compete for roles. Female employees were being choked. Sergei Haskowitz, who was arrested for SAing women, and many, many more. People were enraged. Eve released a statement. The situation that some of you have experienced or witnessed are absolutely not acceptable. No one should ever feel harassed or disrespected at work. And the types of inappropriate behavior we have recently learned about cannot and will not be tolerated. Then he appointed Lynn Wine Sawyer as their head of workplace culture, who was empowered to examine all aspects of our company's culture and to suggest comprehensive changes that will be beneficial for us, for all of us. The French trade union Solidaires Informatique put in place a class action lawsuit against Ubisoft. At the trial in May 2021, that very little had changed within the company, and many of the staff listed as part of the problem were still hired at Ubisoft. Ubisoft responded, stating, over a period of several months, Ubisoft has implemented major changes across its organization, internal processes and procedure in order to guarantee a safe, inclusive, and respectful working environment for all team members. And these concrete actions demonstrate the profound changes that have taken place at every level of the company. Additional initiatives are underway and are being rolled out over the coming months. July 2021, Solidaires Informatique and 2 former Ubisoft employees filed a second lawsuit within the French courts in July 2021 for still keeping the bad people. In the same month, when Activision Blizzard was facing their own allegations, 500 employees across Ubisoft signed a letter in solidarity with Activision Blizzard. Employees stating that it should no longer be a surprise to anyone, employees, executives, journalists, or fans that these heinous acts are going on. It's time to stop being shocked. We must demand real steps to be taken to prevent them. Those responsible should be held accountable for their action. The man himself, Yves, sent a letter in response to all the Ubisoft employees stating, we have heard clearly from this letter that not everyone is confident in the processes that have been put in place to manage misconduct reports, and they have implemented new anonymous reporting tools. August 2021, a group of Ubisoft employees formed a workers' rights group to demand Ubisoft for action from the company in response to the allegations. Ubisoft and the workers had a seat and had a chat about the potential improvements to avoid having these problems. December 2021, employees started to leave in droves. In combinations of lower pay and the impact of the workplace misconduct allegations. Ubisoft started getting into crypto in video games in late 2021 and planned to make a blockchain and enable players to own NFTs or something. They announced Ubisoft Quartz, a blockchain program marketed as its first AAA effort into blockchain games. Players could buy customizable items for games and then sell or trade them based on the Tezos currency Ubisoft claimed was an energy-efficient cryptocurrency. The trailer was uploaded onto YouTube to gauge the public's opinion, and they did not like it. The trailer stands at 242,000 views with 1.7k likes and 45,000 dislikes, and a ton of criticism in the comment section, and explained how this trailer was already putting negative light on the company and all of the up-and-coming projects. Developers quote saying, don't really understand the problem being solved here. How could you look at a private property speculation, artificial security, and egoism, then say, yes, this is good, I want that, let's put it in art. So the video was subsequently unlisted. Summer 2022, Ubisoft cancelled Splinter Cell VR and Ghost Recon Frontline, and 2 other unannounced titles. 2023, Ubisoft was doing way worse financially. They start the year with canceling 3 unannounced games. Yves sent an email to his employees. Today more than ever, I need your full energy and commitment to ensure we get back onto the path to success. The ball is in your court to deliver this lineup on time and at the expected level of quality and show everyone what we're capable of achieving. Staff working in Paris did not take kindly to the email, writing back, the ball is in our court, but the money stays in his pocket. accusing Eve of trying to shift the blame to his employees, and they called for higher salaries and improved working conditions. Ubisoft had 20,279 employees in 2022, then it dropped to 19,410 employees. In November 2023, Ubisoft laid off 124 employees. Ubisoft fired 45 employees from its publishing teams. Another 45 employees were laid off in San Francisco and Cary, North Carolina offices. Ubisoft was facing bad performance in their games. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, an action-adventure game based on the movie Avatar, releasing on December 7th, 2023. The game had mixed reviews with a Metascore of 72. In the UK, Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora debuted at 5th place in the physical chart. The next week, it fell to 12th place after a 53% decrease in sales. The game was 40% off after barely 2 weeks of release and was referred to as the okayest game of 2023. 2024, Ubisoft kicked off the game with a fiery start after an executive says gamers need to get comfortable not owning their games. This was an unsurprising take from the company that dabbles with subscriptions with their games. Ubisoft Plus Premium and Ubisoft Plus Classics, an $8 and $18 subscription where you could play a selection of Ubisoft titles. The executive goes on about how he wishes to see a consumer shift similar to that of the market for CDs and DVDs, where people have moved on to Spotify and Netflix instead of buying physical media to keep on their own shelves. Despite the backlash they got for the statement, this will not stop them because, quite frankly, they are getting the bag. Because a few months back, they had their biggest month with millions of subscribers and over 500 million hours played. Skull and Bones finally released in early 2024 after being announced in E3 2017 and delayed for 7 years. The game was slapped with a $70 price tag. Eves defended this because he dubbed this Ubisoft's first quadruple A game. The game had less than 1 million players on launch and had extremely mixed reviews. Skull and Bones cost $200 million to make, and the company didn't expect to make back the loss. Star Wars Outlaws, an open world game based on Star Wars, where you play as K-Vess. This game wasn't viewed favorably when it was released. It was called generic, overpriced, and it was buggy. It was predicted 5.5 million units will be sold by March 2025, causing Ubisoft's share price to reach its 10-year low. Ubisoft admitted that Star Wars Outlaws had failed to meet their sales expectations. As a result, Ubisoft delayed the release of Assassin's Creed Shadows for further polishing. The game hasn't even been released yet and is underneath a lot of scrutiny. The premiere trailer was uploaded on May 15, 2024, featuring the character Yasuke. This sparked a lot of criticism, with people being confused why there is a black samurai instead of an Asian one, calling it inaccurate to history. Matt Kim of IGN actually praised Ubisoft for their choice, citing that according to history, there was actually a black samurai that lived in the 16th century and went by the name Yasuke. Ubisoft said they wanted a samurai character whose story was open-ended enough to allow for creativity. Amidst all the backlash, Assassin's Creed Shadow's team issued an apology to Japanese fans, stating that Assassin's Creed Shadow is not intended to be a factual representation of history, instead a compelling history fiction set in feudal Japan. Ubisoft had collaborated with experts to inform their creative decisions. Ubisoft Japan issued an apology for the unauthorized use of a flag in their game. They used a flag of a real-world reenactment group. Scholars had come out in support of Yasuke's portrayal, stating that there is no reputable Japanese historian that had questioned Yasuke's samurai status. Despite all the controversy, the game is set to come out February 14th, 2025. All this drama caused Ubisoft's stock to drop nearly its lowest levels in the previous decade. The Gilmont family was considering a buyout of the company. Tencent and Ubisoft have been speaking with advisors to help explore ways to stabilize Ubisoft and bolster its value. Ubisoft acknowledged the rumors by stating, Ubisoft has noted recent press speculations regarding potential interest around the company. It regularly reviews all its strategic options in the interest of its stakeholders and will inform the market if and when it's appropriate. On October 16, 2024, over 700 Ubisoft employees walked out on a 3-day strike. The strike was organized by the STJV union, involving multiple French Ubisoft studios, aiming to protest the company's requirement to return to the office 3 days a week and demanding an option for employees to choose their monthly working days in the office and an increase in salaries. 2 months later, Ubisoft has yet to address the union's concerns. This month, Ubisoft announced that their free-to-play game X-Defiant would be shutting down in June 2025, only a year after the release of the game. October of this year, there were rumors of this game shutting down, but the game director, Mark Rubin, disproved these allegations. This announcement led to Ubisoft San Francisco and Ubisoft Osaka closing, resulting in up to 277 employees being laid off. From riches to absolute disarray, the downfall of Ubisoft has been gradual, but now everything is starting to crumble in front of everyone's eyes. Right now, the future of Ubisoft is very grim.